Welcome to the Urban Agorist Podcast, episode number 16. My name is James, and today I am joined by Jason Brunson from Rebel Gardens. Before we get started with Jason, let me tell you one more time about Renegade University. Thad Russell's Renegade University is the perfect place to find dissident and countercultural scholarship online. Thad features courses from scholars in African American history, American history, U.S. foreign policy, and even sex work and sex positivity. There's courses on postmodernism, the philosophy of Friedrich Nietzsche, and coming up, Thad Russell is going to be teaching a course himself, along with James Lindsay. Thad Russell and James Lindsay come from different sides of the postmodernism debate, and they're going to be co-teaching this unique course coming from two different positions on this hot-button issue. You definitely won't want to miss it, and pre-enrollment has already begun. Go to urbanagorist.com/renegade or just follow the link in the description of this episode. With that being said, here is my interview with Jason Brunson. All right, Jason, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me, James.
Sure. So I've been a subscriber to your newsletter for a little while, and I have actually, as I was like shopping for seeds on Amazon, just happened across your seed offerings on there. Why don't you kind of introduce yourself? Just tell us who you are and where people can find you too.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Jason Brunson. I'm the founder of Rebel Gardens, and we basically work to provide kitchen gardeners, basically anyone who wants to grow their own food with the tools and resources that they need to do so. Anyone who wants to check us out, the easiest place to find us right now is on Amazon. Just go up there and search Rebel Gardens. We will pop up. You can also go to rebelgardens.com. Currently that redirects to Amazon because, like very many things in 2020, the website got delayed. That will be coming in next month, actually. That will be up. So check us out.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I noticed that it redirects to Amazon. I figured that was just your way of kind of shortening the Amazon URL, which is kind of difficult sometimes. So it's good that you're starting a website, though. So great. So you write a lot about food sovereignty and like sort of where we're at as far as the food system. Can you tell the audience a little bit, just sort of where you come from as far as the state of food in America today, or really, I mean, in the West? I guess it's not just localized to this country, really, right?
Yeah, no, it's practically global at this point. But yeah, sure. So I'll back up. I'll make it a bit of a personal story, and I'll take that into the big picture here. So I started years and years and years ago myself interested in health and fitness, right? Like a lot of teenage boys, I was into lifting weights, trying to impress women. And that took me into a rabbit hole of nutrition and health. And that took me into a rabbit hole of our food system and why it was almost impossible to be healthy eating in the American and now practically global industrial food system. And so, I mean, we could turn this into a 4-hour podcast on why our industrial food chain is broken. But the nutshell version is that it was built from the ground up. I mean, we're talking government policy, corporate policy, everything from the ground up to provide calories. And it does that really, really well. There's nothing better in the history of the world to provide calories. The problem is it provides those calories at the expense of actual nutrition, right? Vitamins and minerals. It provides those calories at the expense of the soil. Our topsoil has been degraded to the point that some people estimate we have less than 60 growing seasons left before we may have a new dust bowl, right? Potentially really bad. It creates those calories at the expense of the environment. You have massive runoff of fertilizers and herbicides and all kinds of stuff into the ocean. You have it leaching into groundwater. You have drift that's making people sick because they're breathing it in. It's just a massive problem. And the rabbit hole goes even deeper than that with stuff that I won't pretend to be an expert in, with soil biology and how it's changing the microbiome of the earth, and probably not for the better. It's something that was really, really important at one point, and I think the Green Revolution was really vital, right? This was the discovery of how to create fertilizer practically out of air, crossbreeding plants so they grew better and easier. This was great. It pretty much freed certainly America and the West and slowly the whole world from hunger. but it's wrecked everything else that food stands for. And I personally blame tons of allergies and kind of the diseases of modernity on our food system. I think it's a root cause of so much.
All right. You mentioned the possibility of a second Dust Bowl. For those of us who don't remember seventh grade history, what was the cause of the original Dust Bowl, and what might cause a second one?
Oh, now you put me on the spot with my second grade history here. Without
pretending to be too much of an expert. I mean,
well, the first Dust Bowl was I'm remembering my history right. It was a variety of factors, both economic and just farming related. And basically, the farms turned to dust, right? They couldn't grow anything. There was huge dust storms as the wind just kicked up the soil, and it led to widespread hunger. It was one of the big things back in the 1950s, if I'm not completely wrong, that caused a lot of problems. It was very serious hunger in the United States. Future one is being driven almost entirely by what I like to call extractive farming, right? So every time someone plants a wheat field, they go out, they plant a wheat field, they get a big crop because they just dump fertilizer on it, they dump herbicides on it, they dump pesticides on it, right? But each time they do that, we lose topsoil, and topsoil is lost. It's in the process of farming. It's lost after the harvest if there's no crop covers put down, and just the whole process is very extractive. There's nothing that's recreating our topsoil. So the whole system of topsoil is a vast, complex, interconnected loop of things where animals come through and they eat and they poop, and the poop gets turned into soil by other animals and microbes and so on. And it's just this long process that we've interrupted to create food. And that's great, right? It's like pulling oil out of the ground to fuel your car. You got to do it, and that's fine. The problem is, peak oil is probably still a long, long ways off. Peak topsoil is actually a potential real problem coming up. And I won't say no one's considering it. I mean, obviously people know this. It's being studied. It's being looked at. But there's no at-scale solutions being presented that can do anything more than kick the can down the road a few harvests. So it's a very big potential problem in let's say a generation.
Mm-hmm. What do you think is the solution? How do we prevent it?
So preventing it's going to take a lot of different things. Right now, I'm a big fan of the Regenerative Agriculture movement that's going on. Someone can Google the Savory Institute if you want kind of one of the big people in that. And that's a thing that's entirely dedicated to transitioning farming away from the extractive industrial system, right? Treating our soil like it's an oil deposit and just sucking the topsoil out to create food, and turning it back into a holistic circuit where we're actually building topsoil with each harvest as opposed to extracting it. I think that's one of the big things, and that has tons of knock-on benefits, right? It actually helps pull carbon out of the air. So if you're concerned about CO2 and global warming, part of the solution. It makes for more nutritious food. It did all kinds of cool stuff with it. Beyond that, we honestly need a top to bottom rethink of how our food system works. Again, it's built to create calories, which is great, but I don't know if anyone's noticed. I mean, maybe I'm just crazy, but I don't think calories is a problem. I think obesity is a problem. I think diet-related health is a problem. But I don't think not enough calories is a big problem these days.
Yeah, especially not here in the United States, where, I mean, the only people really starving are either doing so by choice or by virtue of a mental illness, or they're institutionalized in some way. Can you talk a little bit more about regenerative agriculture?
Sure, what exactly is it? I'm sorry, say that again?
What exactly is it? Just sort of a big picture.
Okay, yeah, so great. I'm not an expert on it. I'm just a fanboy of it. But the basic idea behind it is there's a couple approaches to it. One is to shift from planting annuals, so stuff that basically grows and dies in a one-year cycle, and replacing as much of that as possible with perennials. This is stuff that will grow. Like your ultimate perennial would be like a fruit or nut tree that's going to be around potentially for hundreds of years producing food. And that helps to anchor the soil. It protects the soil. It gets a whole process going. At a minimum, stops the degradation of the soil and the topsoil loss, but can also be part of rebuilding. The actual act of rebuilding is a system where people then introduce animals into the farming situation. So the simplest version is you plant grass somewhere, the animals come through, usually cows, but whatever herbivores come through, they eat the grass down and they poop. And sometimes they'll bring in other things on the back end like chickens, and there's a whole process there. But over time, that will then rebuild topsoil. That's kind of what created topsoil in the first place, was mass herds of buffalo roaming the wide open plains of America. And this is attempting to replicate that in a controllable fashion that provides food for us. And over time, what that can be done is you can enter a system of like crop rotation, where you regenerate topsoil in one area, you farm in another, and then you switch. There's tons of others with using cover crops. There's nitrogen fixing cover crops that you can put to reduce soil erosion while also boosting nitrogen, so you don't have to use as much fertilizer, which has its own set of problems, and so on. That's kind of the high level view of it.
Great. So you were the one who introduced me to the Seed Summit, which I was promoting pretty heavily in the run up to that event. Can you talk a little bit about seed libraries or seed collection, that kind of thing? I know that you own a seed company. I'd even be curious to know kind of where you get your seeds and how you got into it as well.
Yeah. All right. 3 questions there. I'll tackle them one after the other. So,
okay.
Seed libraries are vital and important. It's a little weird for someone who currently makes their living primarily selling seeds to be like, everyone should save their own seeds and trade with each other and, cut me, the middleman, out of the equation. But you should. I will be more than happy to go bankrupt and start a different business because everyone is saving and sharing seeds. That will make me happy. But seed libraries are just a great community tool where you can preserve local knowledge, right? That's the biggest, beyond kind of, quote unquote free seeds. It's the preservation of the different plants that survive, right? The strains or the types or whatever you want to call them that do best in a given area. Because not only is there, zone 1 and zone 2 across America for kind of how the temperatures and the climates are, but there's also microclimates. Within those, there's certain areas that get more moisture or more sun or are hotter or colder or whatever. And so seed libraries allow the creation of this local knowledge to persist and grow and develop and improve over time. The seed libraries are great. Sometimes they're literally in libraries. Sometimes they're, private people trading. I see them popping up on Facebook or what's that neighborhood app, I believe it's called?
Nextdoor.
Yeah. That's what I was trying to think of. And people will do it privately. But yeah, that's the gist of it. It's people saving seeds from their healthiest plants and trading them with each other to create a consistently better local food supply. Now, in terms of like where I get my seeds and how I got started and all that, the long and the short of the genesis of Rebel Gardens was literally just me shopping on Amazon one day for seeds. I've been interested in gardening for a long time, but I got introduced to the book Grow Food, Not Lawns many years ago. And it really kind of clicked in me that kind of these disparate interests I had, a hobby of gardening, the food supply, hungry people, and so on, all kind of interconnected way more than I thought. And I began looking at it differently. And so one day I was shopping on Amazon and I was really depressed with my choices. They were just garbage. This was quite a few years ago. Amazon has a much better selection these days, the internet in general. But there wasn't much. And so in my professional life, I was an e-commerce platform manager. So what I did, I specialized in Amazon and eBay and all that stuff. And I was like, I can do this better. And so I did. And that's the genesis of Rebel Gardens, was me creating the product I wanted to see in the world. And it's been clicking with a lot of people. So I've been very excited about that. And then where I get my seeds, I work with a big network of growers. I have a company that does my actual seed packaging for me. And so it's everything from some of the bigger seed farmers out there to smaller ones. The long-term goal for Rebel Gardens is to create a network of small seed growers across the different zones in America, so I can get kind of the best quality stuff supporting the small farms. That's the future. That's the future plan. But yeah, right now it is it's just like a lot of stuff. There's kind of a wholesale network of seeds, and I work with the best ones. I do my best to cut Monsanto completely out of the supply chain. I only source certified organic. I source virtually everything is sourced, grown, packed in the United States. I have my microgreens are the one thing that comes out of Canada. They're the grower up there that does them. So that's kind of who I am, where I come from, and what I'm doing.
Cool. What about what advice would you have for someone who doesn't have any experience gardening, and maybe they don't even have a yard? Maybe they've just got if a balcony, that's what they've got, and a kitchen.
So my ultimate advice is always start with where you are and what you got. The worst thing someone can do is hear a topic like this, hear someone like me speak, and then be like, okay, I want my own farm. Even if you have the land, it's a terrible idea. You're going to spend a lot of money and probably fail and get angry, and it's not going to be good. So if all you have is a window sill or a counter, you're a little blessed in that you can start small and grow. The best place to start, in my opinion, is going to be three places. Microgreens, lettuce or other leafy greens like kale, and herbs. And the reason for that is all three of those are pretty easy to grow. They grow pretty well indoors, which means you can do them year round, and you can do them on your counter. And a lot of them, in particular, microgreens and herbs, are really expensive in stores. So you'll actually save a bunch of money. Right? There was a book that was called like the $20 tomato or something like that once, where someone audited his gardening and how much his tomato cost. And that's true for a beginning gardener trying to go after the fancy stuff. Actually, it can cost more than buying it in a store. But microgreens, herbs, yeah, you're going to save money, certainly by the second try. And those are definitely the best beginner places to start. You don't need much.
Yeah, I got an arrow garden. It's like a thing that Miracle-Gro puts out. It's just a little hydroponic system, I believe, that sits on your kitchen counter. And I've been growing my own salad for the last year. And so this year I'm kind of graduating to a soil-based planter garden that's going to sit in my dining room until it happens that I have, a bigger yard where I can actually start like a real honest to goodness garden. But I feel like that gradual approach is probably even better than just jumping right in. Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, it's where I'm starting, right? I kind of look at myself as the archetype here that I try to create products for and content for. Because, I live in suburbia. I don't have a ton of room. I got to decide, do I want to have some grass for my kids to play on, or do I turn it into a garden? I live in Oregon, so it rains like 8 months out of the year. So it's not like I can have an outdoor garden that long. But yeah, so your approach, like hydroponics, are fantastic. I've been playing with a bunch of different hydroponic units, trying to figure out that world. That's actually a more recent foray for me. I've been a soil guy for years. My definite favorite at the moment, and it's, my kids disagree with me here, but my favorite at the moment is microgreens. And I totally recommend that to literally 100% of the people. I don't care how much of a brown thumb you have. It is the easiest thing in the world. It's like a shallow tray and some seeds, and like they'll grow. You may not get as much and as pretty as like the people on the internet, but like they will grow. You'll get a harvest, and they're super nutrient dense. They're one of the few foods that are actually superfoods versus just marketing hype as a superfood. And at Rebel Gardens, like we're always trying to build solutions for people like myself that don't have space or maybe don't have time. Like my curse was always I failed to water things. Like that is my gardening curse. I will forget to water things all the time. So for microgreens, we've built a little personal sized microgreen system that's completely self-watering. So you set it up and you're done. Like you just harvest pretty much 7 days later. And that's just sort of, yeah, that's where you start.
Is this the product that you've been teasing on your mailing list?
It is. It is. It is. It is a product that it has had a very long production cycle, but it's been worth it. I'm pretty excited for it, and it's officially done. And now it's just a matter of figuring out how to actually get it into people's hands. So yeah. I'm very excited for this announcement coming up.
Nice. Any estimates on when it's going to actually be launched?
Yeah. We're currently in the process of kitting it. So there's a few different parts to it. So we're putting them all into one box. And as soon as we have enough of those done, we will be shipping it off to a warehouse to start distributing. So it really just comes down, like, because of the time of year, that shipping to a warehouse could actually take a really long time.
Yeah.
But my goal is definitely to have it available in time to make it by Christmas. So fingers crossed for about a week or so from now. But yeah.
All right. Awesome. I'll make sure to link to it if it's available by the time I post this, which should be, I think, right around a week from today that we're recording. Another summit that you talked about was the Get Out of the City Summit. I didn't join that one mainly because I just didn't have the time to do it last week. Can you talk a little bit about what that was about? And I mean, you live in suburbia. I live, as the name of the podcast, at least for now, would indicate, right in the middle of a big city. Why should people get out of the city?
So the Get Out of the City virtual summit was a lot of fun to be a part of, and the gist of the summit was less about truly escaping the city than it was escaping kind of the urban modern mindset. But definitely, I mean, people should literally consider escaping the city. I mean, I'm slowly chipping away at my wife to get us out of suburbia and into somewhere less city-like. But the idea was everything from, that was really it was almost like homesteading for urban and suburbanites, because it dealt with, reducing your stuff, right? Minimalism. It dealt with growing your own food across various situations. It dealt with mindset. It dealt with water. It dealt with a lot of homesteading-ish things, but applicable to kind of almost everyone. Yeah, highly recommended. I believe the free showings for it are over now, but it's definitely worth checking out if you have the chance.
Yeah, it looks like the replays are available at a bit of a cost, but probably worth paying it if you're interested in not only getting out of the city, but just sort of getting out of the city mindset and learning to sort of exist where you're at.
Sure.
So I have my audience is primarily libertarians. All the stuff that you were talking about earlier sounds kind of hippie, sounds kind of environmental weenie, anti-business, et cetera, et cetera. What would you say to sort of someone coming from the right who thinks that, say, Monsanto has saved so many lives that it can't possibly be bad?
Yeah. So what I would say is, your podcast is the Urban Agorist. So I'm going to assume most people listening to this are either agorist or agorist friendly. And I would say, go back to your roots. One of the inspirations for some of my stuff is Carl Hess and his work, what's called Community Technology.
Yeah.
Really expensive book right now that I'm hoping to find a PDF of somewhere. But his experiment in transitioning a city in, I believe it was DC, into a semi-self-contained and localized food system using aquaponics and vertical gardening and all the other stuff that was in there. It's something people should pay attention to, because you can look at Monsanto and you can be like, it's not that bad. Like, they're just doing they're doing what's best for everyone. And if they make money, great. And the problem isn't to declare anyone evil. Like, I think there are companies that honestly are kind of evil. But on net, I'm not anti-business. I run a business. It's the system that's in place. If you're a libertarian, if you're a right libertarian, you understand the notion of like economic incentives. You understand things like public choice. And all of those incentive structures are built literally since the 1800s in America to construct an extractive food system based around calories, not health, not nutrition, not doing anything for the earth. Like, it's terrible. So yeah, I would go back to those roots with Carl Hess, with Seek 3. He was less, specific in his writings, but a lot of his stuff is around agorists banding together and building the alternatives within their communities. And then, expanding from there through trade and specialization to recreate a completely free market. So food is the ultimate intersection, because the reality with our food system is if you are on the right and you think big government is a problem, within our food system, you are totally correct. The farm bills and the regulations and just big government is a huge problem. But if you're on the left and you're like big business is evil and scary, you are correct. Like corporations are capturing the regulatory system. They are manipulating markets. They are consolidating stuff. It's pretty terrible what a lot of them are doing. So it's a beautiful intersection of right and left. Everybody's right because there's very little good going on at scale within our food system, and everybody can get on board with fixing that because it impacts everyone.
Yeah, I think, you mentioned SEK3 and some of the other sort of agorist pioneers. One of the things that attracted me to the philosophy of agorism, even more than the practice of it, because I'm not a very practical person, I'm more of a heady person. But in any case, the one place where they differ from traditional or sort of more right-leaning libertarians in the vein of like Ayn Rand, especially, and even Rothbard to an extent, is the sort of rejection of the corporate model of, I'm going to say business. I mean, obviously, I think that in a free market, there would be some place for corporations, but where corporatism, I guess, corporations sort of running the world. I think that libertarians can sort of neglect and underestimate the impact that has on not only, the economy, but just everything, including the food system.
Yeah, and I think that is a blind spot. And so, I think worked like Tyler Cohen's, what was it called? Love Letter to Big Business or something like that, is an important read for anybody to have a balanced view. I'm gonna commit heresy and recommend that people go read some left libertarians around the ideas of the diseconomies of scale. This has been kind of an important evolution in my thinking, and that is that a lot of kind of the megacorps probably couldn't survive. It's not that the corporation is evil. It's not that every variant of hierarchy is going to, recreate state and lead to horrors like a lot of left libertarians and left anarchists will think. But it is that those huge businesses probably could not exist in free market. You don't have subsidized highways. You don't have subsidized ports. You don't have as easy of a time figuring out how to manipulate regulations so you can pick your externalities off onto everyone else through pollution or pesticide runoff and fertilizer runoff. And when it comes to the food system. So understanding, I think, a bigger, more holistic view of the economy, something that is taught, by Rothbard and by Mises and by SEK3 and everybody, leads to a position where big business isn't good or bad, but it probably wouldn't exist. So let's worry less about big is bad or small is beautiful, and worry more about what makes sense for creating change in our community and then at scale. That's kind of the approach I take to it.
Yeah, for sure. So getting back a little bit to microgreens, just because I see it everywhere. I watch gardening YouTube channels and stuff like that, and it seems like everyone's growing microgreens in these little trays, and I don't even know what they are, to be honest. Like, other than just garnishes on gourmet food, how are microgreens used? Some of your kit that's coming out.
Yeah, so microgreens are kind of one of those trendy things that I'm actually excited about. My personality is if it becomes popular, I don't like it anymore. I'm totally a hipster like that. But
typical Oregon.
Yeah. But microgreens I'm super excited about. So microgreens, so there's nothing magic about microgreens in terms of what they are. So they're seeds. They are grown specifically for microgreens, but they're not radically different, right? Kale microgreens or kale seeds. But what they are is you grow them in a highly dense low soil or even no soil. My kits are fully hydroponic. They don't have soil situation. And you cut them at about 7 days of growth. So they're just kind of getting their true leaves, typically the right before, right after that happens. And at that point, they are incredibly nutrient dense because they still possess a lot of the nutrients that locked up in the seed that drove that growth and germination. And they haven't started trying to pull them up from soil yet. So some studies will go so far as to say that they have, like, I believe it was broccoli microgreens that I was reading about, and they have up to 40% more micronutrients than a full-grown broccoli does on average. So they're super nutrient dense. They're super yummy, in my opinion. My 10-year-old disagrees, so your mileage will vary, but I think they're super good. And they're pretty. They make, if you're into Instagramming your food, add microgreens, you'll get more likes. That's what they are. They're basically little super nutrient dense versions of vegetables. And they're super easy to include in salads, sandwiches, throw them into smoothies. They're a fantastic little item.
So they make a good mix in for that kind of thing, but maybe not as like a side dish, for instance.
No, I mean, my wife just the other day said I had kind of a few that had been cut and were starting to wilt, and she's like, I made a salad out of them. So you can just eat them on their own, just throw some dressing on them. But yeah, usually they are like an ingredient or a garnish. But my salads are increasingly becoming like 50% microgreen, 50% lettuce. Fantastic.
Oh, that's fantastic. All right. So, what about food sovereignty? Is that something that you focus on, as far as like just becoming completely disengaged from the food system?
So I don't, but only because it is not currently practical or realistic for 99% of people. I think if you can achieve food sovereignty, you absolutely should. Like, I'm a mega fan of the homesteading movement and people who are kind of transitioning as much of their food consumption to what they produce themselves. But realistically, it's not realistic for most people. It's not possible to do at scale, at least yet. So I don't focus on it. I focus more on empowerment and how we can take our gardens and kind of wield them as a sort of counter-economic weapon against the bureaucratic state and corporate entities that are deforming our food system. And that's much more. I want to see the food system fixed, not necessarily a few extra people escape it. If that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. You tend to run in circles that kind of have that similar worldview and mindset. Would you say that there are a lot of agorists in that community? Is it mostly people on the left? Like I said earlier, this seems like a really hippie type community, but I don't know for sure.
Yeah, it's funny. So if you go back to when I first kind of got interested in food and nutrition and food systems, it was very much a left-wing hippie thing, right? Whole Earth catalog, the little mom and pop health food stores that existed before Whole Foods. It was very left-wing. But over time, at this point, I would say it is not a left-wing thing at all. I wouldn't say it's like a right-wing thing. Like if you go into, say, the homesteading movement, that's a very libertarian-friendly, right-leaning place, or at least it has a sizable contingent that is. Whole Foods, John McAfee, I believe, is the owner of that. No, whoever owns Whole Foods, he's a libertarian. You look at people like Dave Asprey, who's a very popular blogger, and he owns his own cattle ranches and stuff. And I don't know if he talks politics at all, but he's definitely libertarian leaning based on listening to his podcast. Yeah, it's definitely converting. I give a lot of credit to Joe Salatin. So if anyone hasn't heard of him, go Google him. He has the best books out there about our food system. And he calls himself, like, he has some long-term, but he's a lunatic libertarian farmer capitalist. And he's definitely made it okay to be libertarian or to be right-wing within this broader movement.
Yeah, I heard Joel Salatin got canceled. Have you heard anything about that? I just heard about it this morning, so I don't know for sure.
So I don't know all the details. The only thing I really know is he used to do a lot with Mother Earth publications. I believe that's what they're called. And they broke ties with him over something. I don't know what it was. I mean, these days it could have been anything from something actually bad to nothing. So yeah, I don't know the details around that. I know. Yeah, he had to break ties with some left wing people, but I mean, there's still he's still out there.
Oh, looks like he said he wanted coronavirus. That might be part of it. That's
that would probably be something that would do it for the COVID concerned.
That's definitely controversial, I suppose. Yeah, so Joel Salatin, he's a good one. I think he was actually at the Libertarian Party convention this year too, which it's different for party politics, I guess. Are there any other kind of luminaries in the space that you would recommend? I know I watch, and he's not political at all, but Kevin Espiritu on Epic Gardening and James Prigioni, whose YouTube channel title I can't remember, but I'll make sure to link to it. Those are two guys that I watch a lot, and they've just basically turned their entire backyards into sort of an urban farm. Are you familiar with them? They're probably not. That method is probably not great for people with a family, but if it's just you and your partner and a dog, then you don't need a whole lot of green space, I guess.
Yeah, you don't. I mean, it's actually amazing how much you can do with a tiny bit of space. But yeah, so I am familiar with them. I did a kind of quick and dirty summit for beginning gardeners at the beginning of 2020, kind of when everything was going crazy and everyone was scared the food supply was going to shut down. And you can check it out completely free. It's over at growfoodnotgrass.com. And Kevin Espiritu is one of the presenters on there.
Yeah, I think that's actually how I found you.
Okay.
It was just sort of a random thing. I found Grow Food Not Grass and then replied to one of the emails that you sent.
Okay. Yeah. I do remember that. Okay. Yeah. So yeah. But everyone on that, I pulled them because they are all actively teaching about food growing primarily, be it on YouTube or Instagram or wherever. So that is a fantastic resource, not only for a beginning gardener just itself, like, rather than spending, $200 on a course or even $30 on a book, you can grab that for free and it will get the ball rolling for you. Then you can look at each of those people and they are fantastic resources for anyone who's wanting to go deeper.
All right, Jason. Well, it's been a pleasure talking to you today. We're running low on time. So where can people find you now and how can they support your efforts?
Okay, so the best place to find me is actually to go sign up for growfoodnotgrass.com. I promise I will email you plenty once you do that with everything going on kind of in this universe as well as the company. But you can also go to rebelgardens.com and that will take you straight to my products. Yeah, so be on the lookout for the new microgreens kit. If our discussions here has piqued your interest, it's the ultimate tool for a brown thumb person who wants to try their hand at growing some food. So that will be coming soon. And yeah, you can find me on social media, Instagram and Facebook at Grow the Rebellion. And yeah, other than that, I just hope everyone takes the chance to try to grow one thing. Whether it's microgreens, whether it's lettuce, whether it's with me or with, the dollar store seeds, I don't care. Just go ahead and give that a try and let me know how it goes.
Great. And I'll make sure to link to all the stuff that I use in addition to your seeds, obviously. The stuff that I use for my little indoor garden, which has served me really well for the last year. And like I said, my Christmas list is just full of indoor gardening stuff. So maybe I'll make a little list of things that people can pick up. Thanks a lot, Jason. I will make sure to link to all your stuff, and I really appreciate your time today. Best of luck.
All right. Thank you, James.
All right. Thanks again to Jason for joining me today. As always, you can find the links and show notes for this episode at urbanagorist.com/16. Don't forget to sign up for Thad Russell's Renegade University. And as promised a couple of weeks ago, I am going to be rebranding this podcast. So if you're subscribed, which you should be, you're going to see a new logo and a new title next Monday, which will be a solo episode where I kind of go through why I decided to do a rebrand this early on in the show's history. And if you're not subscribed, please make sure to hit the subscribe button. This show is published on iTunes and Spotify and Stitcher and all of the podcatchers, along with YouTube and Odyssey. Wherever you get it, make sure you don't miss an episode by hitting subscribe. And if you have a couple of minutes, leave me a rating and a review. It really, really helps the show. Thanks again for listening, and I will see you on the next one. And until then, live free.
This is the way